Hey everyone, it's Evan Kirstel here. I have a great guest today as a longtime telecom geek. I'm super excited to chat with Lumen Technologies, a company you may not know, but has a storied reputation and history. Hello, Adil. How are you?
I'm doing well, Evan. How are you?
I'm pretty good for a Friday. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing a little bit about yourself. And of course, Lumen. Maybe I think you're in Austin. I'm guessing it's pretty hot. Maybe introduce yourself and your role at Lumen Technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I am in Austin. It's really nice today. It's only 97. So, uh, so those of you who might not know, Lumen is a data and application services company. We like to talk about, how we've got world-class fiber, but at the end of the day, what we're looking to deliver are services that allow organizations to run their applications faster, get all the connectivity services at the network layer, but increasingly more application services, so security, hosting, edge cloud, managing professional services. At the end of the day, people don't really care about the infrastructure as much as they care about the outcomes that they get delivered from that. And we realized that our value proposition isn't just at one layer; it's higher up in the tech stack. Most customers get value from their apps, so we want to deliver the fastest, most secure platform for those apps and for the data that those apps need. And
Amazing.
oh yeah, you asked me about myself. So I run product marketing and analyst relations for Lumen, which basically means across all of our enterprise solutions, our networking solutions, our edge cloud solutions, security, voice and unified communications, managing professional services. I have a fantastic team that figures out the best way to talk to our customers about those solutions and the benefits that they deliver to them.
Yeah, it's quite a portfolio, and you are a busy man. So thanks for spending some time here and talk about Lumen because that is not just you as a company, but you've evolved into a platform from a network. Tell us about what that means in reality.
Yeah, so I alluded to that a little bit earlier, right? Um, hey, we've got world class fiber, right? We've got fiber all around the world, subsea cables, right? EMEA, APAC, all across North America, all metro areas, within 5 milliseconds of latency. But at the end of the day, the more you think about what is the outcome that we're trying to deliver through that fiber, you think about the way that organizations like to operate these days, the way that organizations differentiate themselves, and whether it's the app on your phone or your management console on your machine, or it's a checkout experience for retail, or it's your industrial robotics, right? Those are all essentially software, and that software is dependent on a reliable, secure, high speed, low latency network to power it, right? A lot of these use cases, modern use cases, are dependent on those services just being an assumed requirement. And so what we decided to do when we rebranded from CenturyLink to Lumen 2 years ago, in September of 2020, was let's elevate the way that we deliver our capabilities to our customers, right? Let's not talk about the bits and pieces that enable that end outcome. Let's talk about the network playing well with the cloud hosting environment. Let's talk about the security layer that is inherent within the network. Let's talk about the managed services and the way that you can deploy applications, whether they're containerized or whether you need a virtual machine to host your application or whether you need bare metal. Those are all details, but at the end of the day, what a customer wants is the fastest, most secure way to deliver their apps. And so Lumen, when we were thinking about what is our value prop to the world, what is the best way that we can deliver value to our customers, we decided to talk about the data services and the apps. And that's where the concept of the platform comes in. So the platform is how we envision our services being consumed by our customers. You don't just care about the physical fiber. You don't just care about DDoS protection service, right? You care about all of those things. And what a platform does is it makes it easy to consume a combination of all those services across all those technology layers. And so That's where the idea of the platform came about. Our customers are responding really positively to it, right? Because of course, if you go to somebody and say, hey, instead of managing 5 different silos of technology, we'll just give you a black box and you just define your SLAs, and the platform will automatically figure out what the best way to manage those requirements and SLAs is. That's a pretty compelling point of view.
Very compelling. And let's talk about edge. I mean, edge networking is all over the tech press these days. There's tons of hype for very good reasons. But when I think about you and Lumen and your network, you actually have edge everywhere. You actually have edge networks literally around every corner. Tell us about that and your strategy around edge computing.
Yeah, so I'll take a step back here. And those of your listeners who've been in tech long enough, remember the early days of cloud and how everybody said, oh, we play in the cloud. And there was this whole wave of cloud washing. So if you were an infrastructure player, you were in cloud. And if you were a hyperscaler, you were obviously in cloud. And everything became kind of attached with the term cloud, where it almost became meaningless. In some ways, I feel like edge is on that peak of the hype cycle, right? And starting to come down a little bit, and the market's gaining a better understanding of what edge is. So let's kind of foundationally agree on what edge is, right? Traditionally, you've got the client server model, right? You've got most of your amazing computing sitting in the cloud. Everybody kind of loves that model, and you've got a bunch of dumb terminals or low power terminals, and the network is how all that communication happens. More and more, however, like when everything becomes smart, when everything from your water bottle to your lamppost to your cars are all producing data, that model doesn't scale very well, right? There's a ton of data that's being produced that has no value, maybe past the point of it being produced, right? And you can't put the smarts to do all the analytics on that data on the endpoint. And it also is super inefficient for me to send the feed from my camera that's monitoring a door so that it's closed, right, for a security camera, to send all that data for analysis 2 states across to a cloud data center. So more and more, we're seeing all this data needing to be analyzed and acted upon closer to the point of digital interaction, right? And of course, there's other reasons, like it's more reliable if that data doesn't travel long distances. It's lower latency and high performance. It costs less. So there's a need to have computing closer to the point where that digital interaction is taking place, and that's what the edge really delivers. It's not a replacement for the hyperscaler cloud. It is not a replacement for any of the super strong machine learning in a centralized location, but it is more of a distributed pattern and a recognition of the fact that we need a distributed architecture. So edge becomes maybe it's compute on premises. That's the on premises edge. Maybe it's compute in a block down the street, right? That's more what we like to call the metro edge. So you might choose to have a portion of your application live on premises, right? If I'm a factory floor, maybe I'll have room for it. But if I'm a retail store, maybe my point of sale system doesn't need to live within my retail store. It can live in the mini data center that happens to be down the block. And so that has numerous benefits. Of course, you don't need to have power and cooling and IT staff managing it, but you've essentially taken all of that efficiency of not having to move that data 2 states across and put it within a distributed network. Now, somebody like Lumen, we happen to have roots in networking, and so we have these things called central offices, right, spread all over the world. And so we undertook a massive investment in converting and upcycling those central offices from not just being network switching points, but to become kind of almost mini data centers. So you can get a small size server there, you can get a virtual machine there, and then you can deploy your apps over there. And of course, it works both ways, right? The hyperscalers can choose to have capabilities at those central offices, and suddenly you've gone to it from a model that said super strong computing 2 states away, nothing close to me, to super strong computing 2 states away, medium-sized computing, right, with kind of a middle-of-the-road latency and cost. And then, if I choose to have something on-prem, that's fine, but I can choose to not have something. And now I think everybody's starting to realize as long as I can manage it with a single pane of glass, as long as I can move my workloads at the right place, depending on the latency needs of the workload, that's what edge computing is to us. And again, as I said, Lumen happened to have presence in in all the metros, and we invested to kind of ramp that up. So today, if you go to lumen.com, you'll see a marketplace, and you will see edge bare metal as something that people can buy and try out. And that allows you to literally look through a drop-down box and say, I want a small size server in Austin, Texas. And you can test whether that gets you the right kind of performance and cost versus deploying that in a hyperscaler cloud, again, as I said, 2 states away or in a couple of different cities. So to us, edge is all about distributed computing, and it's just the way that the future workloads are going to be working.
Future workloads and workloads today. I love how practical and deployed this technology is. I was at your in-person event this spring, and it was just customer story after customer success, after anecdote, after use case. I mean, it was all on display, and honestly, the whole event was just about your customers. So tell us more about customers and what they're doing, some of the preferences, any trends that you're noticing in these real-world deployments.
Yeah, for sure. So and you're right. I think we have last count about 51 or 52 edge nodes in the US, right? And when you figure out how data travels and how quickly data can travel from, again, that point of digital interaction to those nodes, we're really proud of being able to say, we can provide sub 5 millisecond latency, that's super high responsiveness through the network to 97% of businesses in the US.
No
so
kidding. Wow.
That's a lot of coverage. Now, what we're seeing in terms of adoption trends, of course, you've got the early adopters, right? You've got people who want that cutting edge advantage where latency really matters, and they're the ones who are, spare no expense. Let's try this model out. And if I'm doing, crypto mining, or if I am trying to do some financial transactions, if I'm doing trading, those sorts of efficiencies in the milliseconds can lend you lots of advantage. So we're seeing a lot of pickup there, obviously, but we're also starting to see that more general purpose workloads, Evan, are better suited to living within a certain geographical bounds, right? So if I'm a hospital and I have the ability to securely move that data center, that mini server room, and align it towards patient care, the economics work in my favor if I just move that workload or those apps off premises. Same is true for retail locations. If I can have more capability to sell stuff and get more revenue, then that box, that was living in a room that was dedicated for a server rack, no longer needs to exist, right? So we're seeing a lot of adoption for this distributed architecture and greater confidence in being able to outsource these things. The other trend that I'm starting to see is people's willingness and desire to purchase solutions with as simple an experience as possible. And a great example of that is SASE, which spelled SASE, or which is short for Secure Access Service Edge. And what SASE delivers is effectively virtualized network and security control delivered on the edge of the network. So not in a centralized switching location necessarily, but I can now start to provide firewalls, access control, DNS services, switching and routing, right? Everything basically that SD-WAN provided, plus everything you might need to secure the network and the access to it, like zero trust, all being delivered as a combined package, right? So if I'm an IT purchaser, do I really want to buy SD-WAN and configure it and then buy all my security services a la carte, or do I want an experience that is better integrated? And again, this is where the edge really helps you out. If you are deploying zero trust, right, then your service living on an edge cloud location is going to allow for that constant checking of authority for data access far faster, right? We've all worked in organizations where you just kind of see the spinning wheel while they're testing to see if you have the ability to access something, and all these tests and redirections happening. That kills the user experience, right? And you'll suck it up if it's kind of an internal system, but if it's your customers who are experiencing that, they'll bail, right? And it leads to tremendous unhappiness. So SASE, I think, is a huge example of edge networking and security kind of coming together in the form of what we consider a true platform service, and being able to deliver that to the market. The other trend that I, we're really leaning in on is, as this cycling, this generational shift starts to happen within IT decision makers. Like somebody told me the other day, hey, millennials are running organizations now, right? It's not a bad term. Like, millennials run the world, and they're very comfortable with digital purchasing. They don't want to pick up the phone. They don't want to place an order. They're smart. They want to learn digitally. They want to buy digitally. They want to configure digitally. They want to use digitally. They want to cancel their services digitally, right? I don't want to have to pick up the phone and waste my time doing that stuff. As that happens, investments in digital experience are super critical. So when you create a service, our focus is, we want as much of that learn, buy, get, use, pay, renew process to be digital and hands-free from a human involvement point of view. It also extends into other areas, but effectively giving people the ability to learn and buy and consume our services digitally is a huge trend that we're trying to meet the needs of.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like the ultimate app store for the enterprise.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
what a great opportunity for your customers. And yeah, I'd love to see and hear more. So this was just a short introduction, and we're going to follow this up with a series of deeper dives. But tell me, I'm curious, when you're not working, however many hours you work, I won't ask you, but I'm sure it's a lot. What do you do to unwind or have fun or geek out? What are you into personally?
Uh, I like to tinker with a lot of things, Evan. If I'm being honest, it's hard for me to pick one hobby, but I will say I've more recently really gotten into 3D printing and 3D
Oh,
modeling.
amazing.
Yeah, and what's funny about 3D printing is it lies at the intersection of all of my personal needs in my life to kind of unwind. So when it comes to gaming, you can 3D print a controller a
Right.
controller attachment that'll help my PlayStation controllers be more comfortable. For my daughter's projects that I have to help out with for school, we printed a bunch of Greek gods for her, school project. For my security system at home that I was wiring up the other day, I needed a really custom sized mount, so I 3D printed that. For my Lego, I mean, my background's blurred, but there's a big Saturn V Lego set in my back, and I was like, how do I
I
mount?
have that too, yet to be put together, but one day I will
It's a
get
lot of
to it.
fun. It's a lot of fun. And I happened to be in Austin last week, and we were at Johnson Space Center. They actually have the actual Saturn V there. It's amazing. But to mount those things, there's a community out there that's got a beautiful mount, and if you want a vertical mount or a 45-degree mount, you can do it. So that's kind of my hobby. So much of what we do is virtual, right? We write software, we see software in action. Being able to take your ideas and turn them into something physical, that's really cool. So I'm a big 3D nerd these days.
Awesome. Well, that sounds so fun. It's nice to get into something tactile and
Yeah,
things you can touch and feel beyond bits and bytes and streaming and the digital world in which we both live. So, well, thanks so much for joining us. It was really interesting to get a peek behind the curtains at Lumen. You have so much going on, and I look forward to more discussions with your colleagues over the next weeks and months.
it was great chatting with you, Evan. Thank you for the time.
All right. Stay cool in Austin.
We'll try.